You're listening to the Gender Reveal Party podcast. I'm your host, Jay Pryor. This isn't your usual gender reveal party. There will be no baby sex parts. This is the real reveal, where we reveal gender through stories of brave humans willing to share their lived experience. Enjoy the listening. I sure enjoy making it. Hi, and welcome back to the Gender Reveal Party, where we reveal gender and not genitals. I'm Jay Pryor, your host. And hi, Kimberly Keese, my friend from forever, right? We've been friends for like 20 years. I'm so happy to have you here.
I know. Thank you for having me. This is I love what you're doing on this podcast.
Thanks. Well, and I love, you're one of my favorite people to have these conversations with because you've been in this inquiry with me for a long time. And we have a lot in common. So let's start with, tell me, because I know this has shifted for you like with me. What is today, as of April 15th is when we're recording, what is your gender identity?
Let's see, my gender identity. Well, I'll start with saying that my gender identity has shifted over the last few years. And currently it is Gender Queer Butch Dyke, aka nice.
GQ
Butch Dyke.
And how many years have you had a subscription to GQ magazine?
Well, actually, I let it lapse. I'm not.
Oh
no! I know. I probably should put that on my to-do list.
You gave me a copy of GQ magazine once. I don't remember the context of it or how it ended up in my hands, but I just remember you gave me a copy and I was like, you have a subscription to GQ. I loved it. I was like, that is perfect for you. So you are the GQ Butch in my world and always have been. So that's awesome. So thanks for being here. So your gender identity shifted. Do you want to share that with us?
Yeah, sure. So I was working on a documentary, which has taken a back burner, but it's Beyond Pronouns, Conversations About Gender. And I was talking to a lot of different folks of trying to get all ages and all backgrounds. And anyway, and speaking with a lot of young people, there's just so much going on in the world of gender and gender identity. And I was learning about all these different identities that people are claiming or creating.
Right.
And for the longest time, my gender identity was Butch. And I took on Gender Queer Butch Dyke because that really, I'm more than Butch.
Yeah.
And it actually starts a conversation too when I say I'm Gender Queer Butch Dyke.
Yeah.
There's something there to discuss.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to lose my my Dyke card. Because that was either my feminist card or my Dyke card.
It was the hardest part for me about losing my Dyke card was A, it kept me from transitioning, and B, it was the saddest, hardest thing I ever lost out of getting this beard. Yeah. It's a price I pay for the beard. It was losing my Dyke card. Yeah. I get it.
I just remember the whole word Dyke for me is empowering because in my younger years, I would be walking down the streets of DC and I would hear people yell at me like, "You fucking Dyke," and I'd be like, "Yeah, fucking A,"
Me too, and I love that. I felt so empowered by that.
Yeah,
you bet. Call me a Dyke all day.
Yeah. And then Butch is definitely home for me, and genderqueer, it's just it encompasses so much. Again, it's just a place to start talking about, and people will either go, "Oh, that's interesting," and ask me questions, or they'll be like, "Oh." They're like deer in the headlights. They don't even know where to go.
Isn't that funny? That's exactly what happens to me when I come out as trans. Either they go, oh, wow, that's, and want to ask me a bunch of questions, or they go, oh, and then sometimes they'll go, oh, and then they'll leave or whatever. And then they'll go, wait a minute, did you say, because they can't get their head around that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and thank you for being somebody who's willing to have these conversations, right? Because you've been an out gender queer for a long time. And so thank you for being someone who's willing to engage in these conversations. Because like me, I think you're so cool and fun to be with, like people love you, and then they get a different experience of what a gender queer is. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah. And I like having these conversations. I want to encourage people to ask questions, because for someone who lives, we've all grown up in the gender binary, right? And you really, like, your brain has to kind of shift and think about it. And I love when people ask me questions. As long as people are, no one who's engaging with me and asking me questions is offensive. They might say something offensive, but I tell them, no, it's not necessarily offensive. They just often don't know like the terms, or they don't know that something is derogatory.
Right.
So I think just more conversation about gender identity and, just all of it is just, I think it's fun, and people really appreciate also being able to engage and ask questions if they're interested. Yeah. So speaking of gender, when you and I met, right, you were in a troupe. Yes. Right. And the very first time I ever laid eyes on you or met you, it was a party at your house after a show, wasn't it? Or I can't remember. I thought it was a party. I thought the first time we met was at a party at somebody else's house. It's Northern Virginia. No, that's what I have. Well, that's the first time we talked. Oh, okay. Okay. The first time we met was at your house. Was at your house. Okay. And it was after a show, and I was just new in town or visiting. I can't remember. I was with a femme friend of ours. Yes. And came to your house. That's first, but you didn't really talk to me because you were like doing your thing and didn't know who I was that much. But then we had a cigarette together at a party out in Northern Virginia. Was I smoking? At least I was smoking. I don't know if you were smoking, but I'm pretty sure I was smoking outside where it was a little overwhelming in there for me. I was a kid from Kansas. I was a little overwhelmed in that party too. I don't even remember whose. There was a lot going on in that party. Anyway, so but you were doing drag. Can you tell us some stories? Talk to us about that. Sure. So I've always been interested in drag and drag kings. So many people know what drag queens are. And I was part of a production company, Puss N Boots Productions in DC, that started did a drag show, a drag king show to raise money for the Lesbian Avengers. And it was wildly successful. And we all were just like, oh my God, we got to do this again. Yeah. And how fun. Yeah. And we Lesbian Avengers had a little bit of an issue with like all this money that was coming in. It was like, we can't do, whatever, right? Look, wait, can you back up for a second and say Lesbian Avengers, right? Because the Avengers, man, do they even exist anymore? I mean, that was back in the day when we had groups like this, that there were so few of us that we were like, we have groups, we do things like this. We don't. Right. Groups that meet in person. Right. At the bookstore.
At the
women's bookstore.
Yeah. Jessica learned to eat fire by being a lesbian Avenger because that was one of the things they did, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The lesbian Avengers, I was always drawn to them too, because they were like in your face, political action group that would, do protests and, take off their shirts and march through the streets and, chant whatever chants there were and eat fire and, do crazy things. And it was, like it was in your face activism. It wasn't destructive.
Right.
I think maybe I'm just trying to remember, maybe some toilet paper got wrapped around something. I don't know. But it was
It was never violent or never anything.
No,
nothing like that. It was always very passive.
Right. I mean, some people might describe women in the streets with their shirts off as violent, right?
Right.
Oh my God, we can't be seeing breasts.
Right.
But I was first drawn to the lesbian Avengers. I'd been an out lesbian, but I wasn't really engaging with a lot of groups. So I was like, let me join the Avengers, because I think they started in New York City. And then, I heard about the DC chapter and I went to one of their meetings, met a girlfriend there. Was when the Drag King show idea came up, I was like, I am on board. That was like, this is the thing that I want to be taking part of. And so, as I said, it was wildly successful, and we broke off and started doing, there was like six or so of us. Started out with 6 or so people on the production company, and it was, maybe there were 7. There was like 6 femmes and I was the butch. And
boy, that sucks for you.
I know, right?
Holy smokes. Damn, man.
Yeah, it really sucked. So I got to do production. So it started out, I didn't actually perform in the first show. I was doing like, I was doing production, the stage, the lights, the sound, and, doing all that event sort of stuff, the hardware of the event. And the first time I performed, it was actually a production number with the butches behind me, and it was like the building or the creation of a drag king. So we did this, it was a ZZ Top song,
sharp dressed man.
And if you know that song, he sings about like, top hat, all that.
Top
so
hat.
And they were like doing a chorus line behind me, right? And they would come. I started out on stage with just like tidy whities,
right,
and my breasts bound with an ace bandage. And
now you said butches behind you before, but what you meant were the femmes.
Oh, did I say butches? No, femmes.
Yes. Femmes all behind you, right? Got it.
Femmes all behind. It was all the femmes that were part of Puss N Boots Productions and me.
Yes. Yeah.
I started, I walk out, I start the show with just like standing there, the lights shining on me with my tidy whities, and and then the music starts, and then they bring me all the clothes, right? So I'm slowly getting, or quickly, or however long, and I did a little dancing with some of the femmes that came. It was just like so much fun. And I was just completely hooked after that. Because that was really my intention in getting involved with this group, was like, I wanted to do drag. And those shows, as you will remember, were, again, wildly successful. And then the after parties that we would have it was the hung jury. They were just hot. And for me, like being on the stage and having women attracted, like reacting to me as I was performing as a man, like as my masculinity was I mean, it was performance, but it was really like part of me, right? It was really comfortable. It was like, yeah, this is who I am, or this is who I am in the moment. And it's very much, it felt very comfortable and very much a part of me. And then having women like be like attracted to that, that energy was just like, whoa, this is this was the bomb at the moment, and so we performed for like 2 or 3 years, and we did some big shows and had some New York drag kings come down, and it was an awesome time. That was like at the end of the 1990s, or the end of that was like 1999 and into the 2000s. It was so much fun, so much fun.
Yeah, I did drag once at the, was it Chaos, when we did a show with Amelia Ray. Amelia Ray and I did a thing, and I had that experience of being on stage, and now I do my own thing on stage, but that experience of having all the femmes screaming for you and all that as you're masculine presenting, it was unbelievable. And there's also this piece that I want to be conscious of my words, because as our femme sisters are listening, I don't want them to be pissed at me about how I'm going to say this, but there's such an important role that women / femmes in our lives as butches play, for me anyway. That was this validation of my attractiveness, of my sexuality, of me. Like, I grew up, and I think I don't know if you had this experience or not, but I had an experience where just naturally men treated me different than they did other girls. Like, they didn't flirt with me the way they did other girls. They didn't like coddle me the way they did other girls or women. Like, they weren't attracted to me. Like, they were not interested in me. Like, they treated me like a dude a lot. And so then when men were attracted to me, it was weird and it was uncomfortable for me, and there was all that weirdness. And so for a lot of my life, I thought I was just an ugly girl. Like, there was a lot of this weird, like, I was confused about that. And once I was able to embrace my butchness, and have femmes, and some of them are the women you're talking about, say to me, you're a good butch, you're a hot butch, you're, like those, all of a sudden I went from being an ugly girl to a hot butch. Like, my life changed dramatically. Like, your whole world shifts, right? When you can start to see yourself as a good looking butch rather than an ugly girl. And I know so many guys and we call each other guys just as our own butch buddies, have that experience, right? And I don't know if that was there for you, but you've always been a hot butch, as far as I know. That's just who you are for me, as this hot GQ Butch. I call you my dapper butch friend. But for me, that was a really important piece that I think is also part of the butch femme dance, is this validation of, part of that. And I don't know if they'd like that or like me saying that. I don't want to feel like we get our self-esteem from femmes, but there was, for me anyway, this real important piece that I got this, like, oh God, this is not who I am. This is who I am. Like this, and these women are validating this. These women are saying yes, and so for me, it was a complete 180.
Yeah. My evolution of my butch identity, certainly, like I tried to date boys because it was what I was supposed to do,
Right.
And it was just like, I had the hardest time in high school, right? Like, I never actually even dated anybody. I mean, I had sex with a couple of boys, but it was awkward and weird. And, fitting myself into a dress or a skirt or like high heels, I felt like I was in drag then,
Right. Exactly.
And there's it's interesting because even now, like when I think about the butch femme dynamic and how I am in that, and how it's like, yes, I feel like, I'm going to use the word validated, but it's not like I validate myself, right? But
Right.
I don't need somebody else to validate me, but there's
Right.
this dynamic, there's this energy, there's this,
Right.
it's a spark. It's a
Yeah.
like a rush. I mean, I can feel it in my body right now,
Yeah. Right.
And then, and then I'm thinking like, when I tell some of my friends now that I get constantly mistaken for a man, they're like, "What? You're just Kimberly. You're right?" And so there's this part of me that's like, yeah, I'm just a human being, right? And there's this, and when I'm dating someone who is femme, and I've had my experiences with women that, like, I think they liked that I was butch, but it wasn't like, they didn't really get it, and I mean, I've had a couple of relationships that have just been like, at first they're like all excited, but it's like they're attracted to whatever, my masculinity or my looks or my fashion or whatever, and then we go a couple of years down the road and I'm like not so sure. And I mean, I'm not so sure that they actually, it's like they don't quite get it. And that's a problem. And I probably stayed way too long in some of these relationships. And I've had women who I've dated that are like, you don't have to hold the door open for me. I am capable. I'm like, I know, it's just like, it's hard to just, like for people to understand. It's not this, it's not like binary. It's not like, man, woman, heterosexual. So we're not playing at being heterosexuals, right?
We're not.
It is. And, being attracted to a woman that is feminine or who identifies as femme and is, celebrating, like for me, like being attracted to a femme woman is someone who feels comfortable in their femininity and there's a strength in that. And there's a lot of different ways to express femininity, right? But all the accoutrement that goes along with, I mean, there's just something about a woman in a dress and heels and doesn't have to have a lot of, there's just something about that, right? And so, it's really hard to explain to, especially, my heterosexual girlfriends.
Right.
Uh,
because a heterosexual woman who is in a dress and heels is not attractive to me.
Right.
Like, that's what
Right.
they don't understand. It's not the look necessarily. It's the chemistry, the energy that, I mean, I remember being like 18, 19 when I first came to Lawrence and first identified as a butch, because, that I had a very formative experience at 18 where my community was butch femme, and then it just disappeared. Like, it just went undercover. And I remember specifically the first time a femme, and she was in a jean jacket. I mean, it wasn't like she was all dressed up, but the first time a femme came up and just took my arm, and I felt like I was 10 feet tall. I mean, I was just like, fuck. I mean, everything in me was just got taller, like everything. And I can't describe why that is, but if it's not the same when it's a straight woman, it's not. So, you can't, the whole look isn't the thing. It's that, like you said, it's the chemistry, it's the energy. And there is something that happens when I'm around those women that makes me want to open the door for her. And that makes me want to be that. And, they love the women I know that are femmes, and My wife is one of them, loves that I do all that stuff. She loves that I make her coffee. And I mean, we've been married for 20 years, so she brings me coffee now too. But there's, but there's still, my love language is service, and that's part of that whole world, the whole dance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That whole, there's something about like putting my arm out and having a femme like hook into my arm that is like,
I still feel it when Jessica does it, and we've been married for almost 20 years. We've been together for 21 years, and we'll be married 19 in October. So I still feel it when we're walking down the street and she comes up and takes my arm. I'm just like, yeah. I remember when we first got married and we were in Nashville and we were walking down the street, and she took my arm, and somebody rode past us and called us newlyweds. And we were newlyweds. We'd been married about a year. And I remember thinking, yeah, we'll be doing this 20 years from now. We do. I mean, she takes my arm. That's how we walk.
Yeah.
That's a butch femme couple right there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, there's just, there's just something like I don't know why I'm focusing on this, but there's just something about that hooking. I will do this, right? And I won't just do this. I will like look at my date or my woman or whatever. And then there will be this, it's like this conscious like coupling that just like, it's like this unspoken thing, attraction, energy, whatever.
It feels amazing.
Yeah, it does.
That's the thing. It feels amazing. Yeah. And it's romantic and sweet and nuanced and lovely. And that's the thing that we have that I don't know many straight people even have that. Like, I don't know any like binary couples that have that, in that way.
Yeah.
Most of them are a complaint about their partners. It's true.
Yeah.
It's my experience anyway.
Well, I just bought a house, so I'm very excited about that. Thank you. So that's been taking up some of my time, but so I was working on, when I think about making a difference, I think I make a difference for a lot of people in different ways and different organizations. But I really want to do something that is creative and self-expressive for not just me, but for the people involved. And so my interest in just talking about gender, certainly with the Beyond Pronouns documentary. And as I said, it's been on the back burner, but what I'm looking at now, and as soon as I get moved into my house and, settled, I want to produce a fashion show for butches, masculine of center, however people, and it's been something I've thought about for a long time. I love fashions and clothes and so I'm just getting started. I've talked to a few people about it. But I'd love to get the community involved. I live in Charlottesville, so for, whether it's going to be in Richmond or DC, I want to have, like some local clothing makers or even some nationally known clothing makers. I try to get all my clothes, at least my pants, and I've got a couple of suits from that are custom made, or at least they're not bespoke, but they're they're custom made to my measurements. Anyway, this, for me, we're talking earlier about how men relate to you, or being an ugly girl or whatever. Like, I felt that for a lot of years, especially when I was trying to, fit the square peg into a round hole, or vice versa, with men. And I think that, there's a, when you're butch and you wear men's clothes mostly, it's hard. It's like, you've got a female body, you get whatever you have in your female body, whether it's hips or
Oh, I'm
breasts.
completely back to that because my body, after I went off testosterone, right? My whole body is back to my female body,
Yeah.
minus the breasts and plus the beard.
Yeah.
So now I got my hips, my butt back, and the lady butt rules the day on the pants. It's the truth. Lady butt is in charge of the pants. I mean,
say lady butt rules
lady
the day.
butt rules the day. That's it. She's in charge. I got a nice round lady butt back there, and
hey, nothing wrong with a lady butt.
Yeah. My wife likes my butch body. I'm pretty happy about this. It's pretty all right. This is working out for me. Who knew?
Yeah. But and so I don't know. Like when I go shopping, it's like, okay, I got to give myself like 4 hours to go into one store and try on, as many pairs of pants. But like finding, and men don't, the run of the mill ordinary men's stuff is like boring.
Yeah.
It's like
awesome. Totally boring.
Right?
So boring.
Brown, blue.
The only thing good about
black.
men's clothing are shoes.
Yes. Yes. I just recently got my foot has grown, and so like all these shoes that I had don't fit me anymore. So I went out and bought like
what size are you? Maybe you should ship me some shoes.
Oh, okay, really? No, I've got like all these, also because of I wear orthotic braces, for my feet and ankles.
Yeah.
So I'm wearing 10.5 now, but I've got like 9 and a halves. What's your size?
Usually 8.5 or 9. I have to wear an orthotic in my shoes too, so they have to slip out the thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're gonna talk about shoes later.
I'll send you pictures. I will send you pictures of all these shoes I'm about to take to a thrift store.
I'm a Johnson & Murphy big fan. I just got oh man, I love those shoes. And their pad flips out, right? So I can slip my orthotic
and
I love them.
Some of their shoes.
Yeah. Anyway,
so
the point is that you want to make clothing accessible for butches,
right? I want
and for other gendered humans that want to express themselves in a masculine way.
Yeah, and I want to, and nothing against like butches that aren't so well dressed, but like sometimes you just see people who are just like, the clothes are too big or they look kind of frumpy or whatever, and I mean, that's cool. Like I don't have to clothe the world in great fashion, but to have more options, or to see yourself, or to see yourself, or something that how you want to see. Like I always have this idea of like how I want to look, right? I'm always I wish I had more money and I would have a lot more clothes, but I mean I have enough, I have a lot of clothes now, but having those images, whether it's, I mean, we're seeing more and more images of butches and masculine center people in TV and media, but like having it live and maybe even having some it's going to focus on butch fashions,
right?
But maybe even having some femmes that are walking the catwalk with butches, and I mean there's just so many different places I could take this, and I would love to like get, this will be my first one, and I'd love to create like a program that I can reproduce in different cities.
Cool.
So that's awesome. That's my latest.
Well, and one of the things too that I think that I even felt, I've looked to other butches. I have my friend Patrice's got good fashion sense. You've got good fashion sense. My friend Ron does. Like I didn't grow up, like I didn't have choices to do that, and it never occurred to me, and I just never thought about it that much, right? I always like shoes and hats, shoes and hats. But even learning to put an outfit together that looks good and that fits right makes such a difference. Because just like you said, I had worn suit jackets that were always too big for me. And I remember the first time I got a suit that was tailored to me, and turning around and looking in the mirror and being like, damn, like I look good. Look at me. Like, you feel good, right? And it makes such a big difference. And people who are butch or masculine in the center or feel that way and don't know how to express it, that's the other thing. For me anyway, I hadn't had role models for clothing. Any guy any person I was around that was masculine to center was a man, and most of the men in my life weren't fashionable, right? So
Right.
I look at other butches. I have, like, even my nephew Chris, I like the way he dresses. Sometimes I'll look at stuff that just stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, just being able to see those things on people and be able to get how that goes together and all that kind of stuff, I think is so important. For me, my boobs were always the thing that got in the way of me looking the way I wanted to look. I'd go get dressed the way I thought looked fly, and then I go look in the mirror and the boobs would always be in the way. And so whacking those off for me was the best thing I ever did for my fashion. I was like, oh, now that looks awesome. I still love the look. I was looking at myself in the camera one day when I was doing a podcast, and I had a button down shirt, and I was like, yeah, I'm still grateful those are gone. I really am. I have no, which is another thing that you and I that's something we don't have in common, right? Because you don't have that world of being dysphoric about.
Yeah, I love my breasts.
Yeah.
And I do have, I stay away from the mirror when I have my pants off, when I have everything off, because I have some dysphoria from the waist down. But I've always, like, my breasts have been, and it's, when I'm like, I wear sports bras, so there's definitely some pressure there, right? That's flattening them out a little bit. Hence, I'm surprised sometimes I'll have on a tight t-shirt and people will think that I'm a man, and I just have this quick story. I was, like, I'm always being told that this is the women's room, right, when I walk in.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm in an airport. This was, I think it must have been still close. It was in New York, and it must have been still close to 9/11, or there was all that security. Anyway, so I'm walking into a women's room, and I see these two, like, I'm walking this way and they're walking this way. I see these two security guards, but they're like, it's more than security, it's like military, and they've got these huge guns, right? And one's a man and one's a woman. At least that's what, that's how I would identify them as. And I start to, like, hook into the women's room, and the man's like, excuse me, that's the women's room. And I turn around and I'm like, what? He's like, that's the women's room. And I grab my breasts and I'm like, yeah, I know. And the woman he was with, like, they've both got these, machine guns or whatever it is. And the woman, like, just starts laughing. And so, just that. So, I mean, I have multiple stories. We probably all have multiple stories about being mistaken for men.
Oh yeah. What's the worst thing ever happened to you in a women's room?
In a women's room, nothing really bad. I mean, I've had people rap on the door when I'm sitting on the toilet.
Right.
This is the and I never think of this, but I always want to say, yeah, I know, I'm changing my tampon in here. But I'm usually like, I know.
We know how to read. I know how to read. Yeah.
It's funny when you walk into a women's room, or you're coming out, and then another, a woman's coming in, and they, like, do a double take, and then they go back out to look at the sign to make sure
they went in the right place.
Right,
I know. I almost
Yeah.
gave a woman a heart attack once, and that was scary. I was in a nice restaurant, and I had a suit on and a tie, and I was binding, and I was not on testosterone yet. I was but she walked in and I was straightening my tie in the mirror and she screamed. Scared her pretty bad.
Yeah.
Thought there was a dude in the ladies' room. I've had toilet paper. I've been shoved against the wall, and I've had toilet paper thrown at my head, and been screamed at.
Wow.
Oh yeah, this
Shoved
was
against
all
the
that
wall.
whole like the year before I transitioned, the 2 years before I transitioned, probably like right when I moved to DC, when I was really masculine presenting, and I just going to the bathroom was like the worst.
Yeah.
In public, it was like I just hate it. I was like, oh my God. Yeah, it was awful.
Yeah.
It was awful. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't really had anything really bad happen to me.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
I mean, almost being shot maybe by that guy, but no, just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just yeah, just thinking about my breasts. I love my breasts.
Glad you do. We're opposite dysphoria there, because I don't have any problem with my
Yeah.
Just
interesting.
Once the tits are gone, I'm all good. So I do like the beard though. I'm really happy to have that. So
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, my friend, any last words you want to share with our audience? Where can we find you? Are you on Instagram and all the things?
Yeah, so currently, so my website is beyondpronouns.com, which is in dire need of updating. And I am on Instagram. Right now, I've been doing much more posting with my job on Instagram than anything else. I gotta say, I'm not like, right now, I'm not using social media as much as I could. With this, I've got this new job and I'm like doing all the things to sell cheese.
Yeah, you're a cheese whiz too, so people might be interested in that.
Yeah, old Chatham Creamery.com. Anyway, what am I? So, again, I've done, so just as far as the gender conversation, I hear, in the news or, in the commentary, like, there's all this discussion about gender identity, what's happening in, it seems like mostly college age, sort of this controversy over, not being able to, using certain language, always, what am I trying to say? There seems to be a lot of political like upheaval around whether it's, trans issues, people having issues with, like, it came up with the Judge Jackson Brown, Judge Catania, this whole, like, how do you identify, or what is a woman, basically. She was asked that question.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So they're going after trans girls in sports. They're going after trans women, young women in college sports.
And so
a lot of that.
There seems to be a lot of this reaction to people either being trans or wanting to use the they them pronoun, or just all these different things. Now, I mean, I want people to talk more about this, not to on both sides. I've seen this this anger and virulence that it has to be this way or it has to be that way.
Sure.
And I just want people to feel free to be able to discuss, because this really is to have people be in this conversation around gender identity. I mean, we have a long history in, of being in the binary, right? Like, I mean, people have lived outside of the binary for thousands and millions of years, as long as we've been human beings, and we are very much black and white thinkers, binary thinkers, right? And I want people to feel free to ask questions and just be in an inquiry about it.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be one way or the other. And I just wish people would just be more kind to each other. Like, if you know somebody that has a different gender identity than man or woman, be curious. And if you are someone who is very strong in your belief about people should be able to, I don't think, do we demand that people use our they them pronouns or a different pronoun or accept me like this? Like, that when you start having these demands, people push back on that. It's just like, look, this is who I am and this is how I live my life. And I get that there's, legal and political stuff going on. I don't know. There's just all, I may not be speaking this very well, but and I'm older and I feel like there's a lot of things that I can just like let go of, and not be focused on. I just want more people to just be open to a different conversation.
Yeah. Well, and that's a part of why we're here. And that's a great opportunity to talk to people about becoming fans or joining our Patreon, because this is where we're going to be having those conversations and continuing to open up this conversation all over the place. So I love being able to have dialogue and being able to, for me anyway, that's I can't get into the mix of the hatred and all that. I have to stay the line of love and stay the line of continuing to keep on keeping on and having these conversations. So thanks for saying that, and thanks for continuing to be that in the world, my friend. I appreciate you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you for all your work that you're doing in this conversation.
Yeah, I feel blessed to have it. Right on. I love you.
I love you too.
All right. Love you. Bye, folks. Hey, thanks for listening to the Gender Reveal Party podcast. I hope you loved it. And if you did, would you take a second and go do all the things like subscribe, rate, review, tell all your friends. Apparently, if you do that, the podcast platforms are more likely to share it. And if you think these stories are important, please take 3 minutes to just go do that. I'd really appreciate it. Also, I'd love to connect with you on social. On Instagram and Facebook, I'm at the Gender Reveal Party. And on Twitter, I'm at Pryor J. It's a real joy and privilege to bring you this podcast. Come back soon. Love you. Bye.